Hi, this is Ray Kruna, and this is the third tutorial about how to create a HDMV menu for Blu-ray discs using Photoshop and the Scenarist Designer plugin. What we're going to be our final product today is going to be a set of files that you will give to your author, and then they can do all the programming and everything they need to with your menus. So what it looks like is a file here. This is basically just a XML file with all of your slices and everything in it, and a folder with then all of your images. And you can see they're all in here if I open them. So those are what the images look like once we're all done. What our Photoshop file will look like is here, and you can see over here in the Photoshop layers we have a bunch of layers, and they're all named appropriately for the Designer plugin, as we went over in an earlier tutorial. And if you need a refresher on that, that's there for what all these different names mean. It may not look that complicated, but once you get into more complex menus, you'll be glad to have these scripts so that you don't have to worry about all the naming. This one, for example, has animation for some of the buttons and other things, and there's a lot of layers here with a lot of names that really matter, that they have to be right. So I'm just going to show you how we're going to do that. So I've already created a our menu, and you can see here you can just do this any way you want in Photoshop. You don't even have to do it in Photoshop if you don't want to. You can do it in 3D Max or After Effects or something. But you can see I have folders here with just the different buttons and everything, and just a background layer. So what we're going to do is save out each one of these layers as a transparent PNG. And you have to give them a specific name. So this is our normal state, so you give it an underscore NOR name. We'll save that. This is our selected state, so we're going to save this. That's SEL for selected. And lastly, we're going to save our active state as ACT. Now we can actually close this because we're done with it. Now, if you saw my last tutorial, I talked about the different plugins and stuff. We're going to be using those a lot today, so make sure you have those installed, not just the export plugin, but also all the scripts and everything. So we're going to go to File, Scripts, and go to Import Folder to Layers. And we're going to import that folder that we just saved these PNGs into. And what it will do is automatically import those 3 layers and name them what the file name was. So if you see over here, you have active, normal, and selected. Now you could have, if you wanted to, had just made these files directly in Photoshop, but I was showing you, I just wanted to show what that import folder does. So now we have that ready to go. The next thing we're going to do is do our slicing. Now in a regular DVD, the authors had to do the slicing, and sometimes they complained about if your buttons were too close together, they didn't like drawing the buttons because they couldn't zoom in. Well, now in Photoshop we do the slicing, so you can make your buttons as close as you want. So we're going to zoom way in, and I'm going to draw my buttons around these. So with the slice tool, I'm just going to draw around my buttons. Okay. So I now have my buttons all sliced up, and this information will go straight to Scenarist, which is really great. So now what we're going to do is we're going to say save for web and devices. Now what this does is normally this is for web's design, and you normally have to select here what kind of file you want to save it as. We're not actually saving any files, so it doesn't matter. You're just going to go to save here, and then for format, select HTML only, and under settings, designer. That's one of the plugins that we installed in the other tutorial. So I'm going to go ahead and name this main menu slices.html. Okay, now what we're going to do is if you go back to your scripts, there's a script in here that's called slices to Scenarist designer. And what we're going to do is select that and select our slice file that we just did and hit open. Now what you're going to see is it is now going through creating all of our buttons and folders and everything we need here based on those slices. And it just makes it real easy for work from here on out. So now we're all done. And sometimes we'll leave a selected layer. You can just deselect that. And if you see, now we have that exact same Photoshop file that we were looking at earlier here. So now what we're going to do is you want to export this using the Scenarist plugin. So if you go to File, Export, Scenarist Designer PS, now you can see over here we have our file hierarchy, and this is real similar to what our names in Photoshop were, all our layers and folders. And actually once you import this into Scenarist, you'll see it's the same even there. There's a couple of options here. You can show your button slices and zoom out a little bit if you want to see your whole thing. And you can go through and preview and just make sure that all your buttons look right. And then here we have some dither options. Since we're only allowed 256 colors, you can do some dithering if you want. These menus obviously don't use a lot of colors and only use 29 out of the 256 we have. So it's not a big deal about dithering. We don't have to worry about that right now. So when we're all ready to go, we just want to make sure that we're going to be exporting the right options. You just go to export. And we are going to be exporting HDMV menus. You can also export BDJ menus if you want, if you're going to be using those. Or HD DVD menus, though no one probably will be using those anymore. So you can go to Browse here, and we're going to create a new folder called Designer. Hit Open. And then I'm going to save these as Tutorial 3. Just hit OK, and just like that, we are now exported. You can hit OK and close this. Now if we go back to our folder here, and we go into our designer folder we just created, you can now see we have our HDMV file, or XML file, I'm sorry, and all of our folders and slices and everything that we created. There's one more thing I wanted to show, and that is another one of the scripts that comes with it, and that is a QC script. And if you go here to Layer QC and run that, it'll ask you to save a file, so we'll just name this main menu and hit save. And it'll say the layer statistics for the current document have been successfully saved to the following location. Okay, so now we're going to go check out that file, and what it is a CSV file, which you can open up in either Excel or you can open up in Notepad or whatever you want. I'm going to open it up in Excel. Okay, now this is for quality control and just making sure everything's right before you're exporting. But the main thing you want to use it for is in here. It says total memory 8-bit. if you go down to the very bottom, you want to make sure that this number here isn't a negative number or below 0. Once you're below 0, you will not be able to import your menus into Sonic Scenarist. And that's just something to make sure that you're clear of before you get started. I created some menus and went a little crazy with animations and found out I was 2 megabytes over, and so I had to delete a lot of the animations and make the menu set a little bit smaller so that it would all load up without too many problems. So that's pretty much it for today's tutorial. Next time we'll go over how to create menus in After Effects with animation and using a lot of the similar steps we used here, but creating more complex and just better menus in general. Thanks a lot. See you next time.